I call the honourable member Jonathan Young.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And this does take me back, this bill. Thank you, Moana. Groundhog Day.
Order, order. Member will use the member's full name or title.
Thank you, sir. Ms Mackey, this takes me back to back in December 2008. The very first speech that I gave in Parliament was a speech on the repeal. You haven't forgotten it. I can't call you Chris, can I?
No.
Call him Mr Speaker. So Groundhog Day. Here we are trying to put into place a piece of legislation, proposed legislation that was repealed by this government. In fact, the very first piece of legislation that we repealed because we knew of the damage it was doing. I don't understand why this legislation is before us, because I know right now that in terms of renewable energies generation, there's something like 3,500 megawatts already consented. It's not as if you have to encourage the industry. What it sounds like to me is that you are creating a disincentive for thermal generation. You say baseload. I mean, talking to my colleagues, we can't actually... We're trying to think of who at the moment is creating thermal baseload generation. We know there's peaker stuff happening. We know that just recently Nova Energy opened a plant in North Taranaki, where I went to and saw that opening. But I'm just really struggling to find the relevancy of this proposed legislation. You know, is it propping up a failing carbon market? Is that what it's designed to do? Is it trying to create a disincentive for thermal generation so renewables get a fair go? Whereas we know there's been a huge development of renewable energy, and there's a huge number of projects in consent, already consented. And we also know that we are the third, in terms of the nations of the world, the highest proportion of renewable energy generation. We are number 3 in the world. And so, look, I don't know what you're trying to do, because we're already doing a lot. We're already doing a lot that is active in this market. In fact, just last week, your colleague down there, Gareth Hughes, on your side of the House, made a comment at a symposium at Victoria University that there's too much tinkering around the space. And this is what's happening. You're tinkering again. And it's creating a lot of... You're talking about this creating...
Order. I'm not tinkering with anything.
Speaker, I'm not referring to you. The member is talking about creating certainty out there for the renewable sector. This creates uncertainty for the energy sector. In fact, that's what the statements were. That's what the sector has said about this piece of legislation when it first came in back in 2008. Tight energy for a start. All right, that's what they said when you first put this proposed moratorium into place with your ETS back in 2008. In fact, what they said back then is that this sort of thinking and tinkering actually will increase the price of electricity. And I know that you're very concerned about that. Go back and read the statements. Go back and read the newspaper articles. All of those things. If the member remembers my speech back in that particular point in time, that Contact Energy, in collusion with Genesis, because of moratoriums like this, was going to import LNG, and they were going to set up an LNG plant in New Plymouth. And all of that was going to bring in LNG to be used in the consumption of energy for Methanex and different companies, and also generation of power. Now, when you start putting disincentives, when you start controlling by regulation that you can't do this. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I understand what you're saying.
And I'd ask him to look at Speaker's ruling 27/5(1). Member may continue.
Thank you, sir.
Brought me into debate far too often tonight.
Well, I'm sure you're enjoying the debate, sir, but we'll leave you out if you're so like. What I'm saying, that the tinkering around policies, around whether it should be thermal or renewable, is actually an out-of-date argument. When you think about what is happening, when I say that, when the member thinks about what is happening in the United States with shale gas, all right, and how that now has been utilised for thermal generation, that has reduced their carbon footprint in the States quite considerably because they have moved away. They have moved away from coal. What I'm saying to the member is that we as a nation here already have a very significant level of renewable, geothermal, wind generation, and we are just unsure of what the member is trying to achieve with this legislation. Because what we've seen over the last number of years is that a huge number of renewable projects have been consented. And as the market continues, then those assets will be built, and as they are competitive, those assets will be put in place as the investors in those assets deem fit. And what this is all about is manipulating and the regulations around the source of energy for electricity generation, which I think is tinkering, it's Groundhog Day, it's not achieving anything that I think that the member hopes to achieve. In the sense, it's trying to, I think in her own words, wait until the carbon market becomes strong, so it's to support that. It's to support the continual building of renewables. They're already there going. They're already there waiting. I don't know what you're trying to achieve. I think that this piece of legislation is unnecessary in this House.
I'll tell you what she's trying to achieve.
Okay.
I call the Honourable David Parker.
Mr. Speaker, the last speaker said